The scene unfolds at a small private airstrip where the sun shines brightly, casting golden rays over a gleaming private jet. It's not just any plane. This one belongs to an exclusive aviation company known for catering to the rich and powerful. Passengers board one by one, each carrying their own air of importance. Designer bags, expensive watches, and tailored suits are everywhere. Among them is a woman in her early 40s, dressed casually in jeans and a plain blouse. She blends into the crowd effortlessly, carrying her own bag without needing assistance from the crew. Her demeanor is calm, almost unassuming. To anyone watching, she looks like just another passenger on this luxurious flight bound for Monaco. What no one knows, not even the staff, is that this quiet woman owns the very plane they're stepping onto. As people settle into their seats, tension begins brewing near the middle of the cabin. A middle-aged woman with sharp features and an air of entitlement storms down the aisle, muttering under her breath. She's clearly unhappy about something or someone. "This isn't what I paid for," she complains loudly to no one in particular. "I thought this was supposed to be a first-class experience, but look who they've let on." Her words trail off as she glares around the cabin, her gaze landing briefly on the casually dressed woman sitting near the window. The woman doesn't notice, or if she does, she doesn't react. But the disgruntled passenger isn't done yet. As she makes her way toward the front of the plane, still grumbling, she bumps into the seated woman while trying to squeeze past. It's a minor incident, really. The seated woman had only leaned slightly to adjust her bag in the overhead compartment. Yet the other woman spins around instantly, her face contorted with anger. "Watch where you're going," she snaps, her voice cutting through the hum of conversation in the cabin. Everyone turns to see what's happening. Before the seated woman can respond or even apologize, the angry passenger escalates things. "You don't belong here," she spits out, her tone dripping with disdain. "People like you ruin everything." The insult hangs heavy in the air, sharp and unmistakable. Some passengers shift uncomfortably in their seats, unsure whether to intervene or stay silent. But the confrontation doesn't end there. In a shocking move, the angry woman raises her hand and slaps the seated woman across the face. The sound echoes through the cabin, leaving everyone stunned. For a moment, time seems to freeze. The slapped woman touches her cheek gently, her expression unreadable. There's no immediate reaction, no tears, no shouting, nothing. Instead, she simply sits back down, her eyes narrowing ever so slightly as though processing what just happened. The rest of the passengers exchange nervous glances. No one steps forward to help or confront the aggressor, who now strides toward the front of the plane, muttering more insults under her breath. It's clear she feels justified in her actions, convinced that she's superior to those around her. What she doesn't realize, what none of the passengers realize, is that the woman she just humiliated is far from ordinary. Beneath her casual outfit and quiet demeanor lies immense power. This isn't just any traveler. This is the billionaire owner of the plane itself. And unbeknownst to the angry woman, her reckless behavior has set off a chain of events that will change both their lives forever. For now, though, the cabin returns to relative calm. Conversations resume quietly, albeit with lingering tension. The slapped woman pulls out her phone, typing a quick message with a faint smirk playing on her lips. Whatever she's planning, it's clear she's far from defeated. If anything, the slap has ignited something within her, a spark of determination that promises to make this flight unforgettable for everyone involved. The tension in the cabin lingers long after the slap. The angry woman, now seated near the front of the plane, continues her rant, though quieter this time. She complains to anyone within earshot about how standards have slipped and how certain types of people shouldn't be allowed on such high-end flights. Her words are sharp, her tone bitter, but most passengers avoid making eye contact. They pretend to read magazines or scroll through their phones, hoping to stay out of her line of fire. Meanwhile, the woman who was slapped sits calmly in her seat near the window. She doesn't raise her voice, doesn't make a scene. Instead, she leans back slightly, her fingers tapping thoughtfully on her phone. To an outside observer, it might seem like she's simply trying to distract herself from the awkwardness of the moment, but there's something deliberate in her movements, something calculated behind her calm exterior. A few minutes pass before the flight attendant approaches the angry woman with a polite smile. "Excuse me, ma'am," he says softly, leaning, and so as not to draw attention. "The owner of this aircraft would like to speak with you privately." His tone is professional, respectful, but firm enough to leave no room for argument. The angry woman blinks, caught off guard. For a moment, confusion flickers across her face. Then, almost immediately, arrogance takes over. She straightens up in her seat, adjusting her scarf as if preparing for some grand meeting. "Oh, finally," she exclaims, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "It's about time someone dealt with this mess." She glances around the cabin, clearly expecting others to share her frustration. But instead she finds only blank stares and uneasy silence. Shrugging it off, she follows the flight attendant toward the rear lounge area of the plane. Her confidence is palpable. She assumes she's being summoned by some corporate executive or minor celebrity, someone who will side with her and validate her complaints. When they reach the lounge, the angry woman steps inside, ready to launch into another tirade. But the sight that greets her stops her dead in her tracks. Sitting comfortably on a plush leather seat sipping a glass of champagne is the very same woman she had slapped earlier. Gone is the casual, unassuming demeanor from before. Now, there's an unmistakable air of authority about her. For a split second, the angry woman freezes, her mouth hanging open in disbelief. Then, recovering quickly, she sneers dismissively. "What do you want?" she demands, her voice dripping with condescension. She hasn't connected the dots yet, hasn't realized who this woman truly is. Without missing a beat, the seated woman sets her glass down gently and looks up with a calm, piercing gaze. "I'm the founder of Sterling Aviation Group," she says evenly, her tone measured but firm. "This plane belongs to my company, and every single person on board today works for me, including the flight crew, the pilots, and even the staff handling your luggage." Her words hit like a thunderclap. The angry woman's face drains of color as realization dawns. She stammers, struggling to process what she's hearing. You own this plane?" she manages to choke out, her voice trembling. "That's right," comes the reply. The billionaire leans forward slightly, resting her elbows on her knees. "And I take incidents like the one that just occurred very seriously. So let me explain something to you. Your behavior was unacceptable. Not just because of the racial slurs, but because of the violence. You assaulted me, a paying passenger, on my own property. That's not something I tolerate." The angry woman starts to protest, her defenses rising. But you bumped into me first," she blurts out, pointing an accusing finger. "You were in the way. It's not my fault." "If I leaned over to adjust my bag," the billionaire interrupts smoothly, cutting her off mid-sentence. "That's all. A simple, accidental movement. Nothing that warranted the language you used or the physical attack that followed." Her voice remains steady, devoid of anger or malice. But there's a steeliness to her words that leaves no room for argument. The angry woman falters, her bravado crumbling under the weight of accountability. She tries to backtrack, offering weak excuses and half-hearted apologies, but the billionaire isn't interested in empty words. Instead, she lays out two clear options. "Here's what's going to happen," she says, standing up now. "Option 1. You apologize sincerely to every passenger on this flight. Not just a quick sorry, but a genuine acknowledgement of your actions. Afterward, you'll agree to attend mandatory sensitivity training sessions arranged by my team. Option 2. We land at the next available stop and you disembark. You can find your own way home, and trust me, my lawyers will ensure you face the full consequences of your behavior." The angry woman's eyes widen in panic. The idea of apologizing publicly fills her with dread, but the alternative, being kicked off the plane and facing legal repercussions, is even worse. She hesitates, torn between pride and self-preservation. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, she mumbles reluctantly, "Fine, I'll apologize." The billionaire nods, satisfied. "Good choice," she says coolly. "But remember, if your apology isn't sincere, we'll revisit option 2. Understood?" The angry woman nods stiffly, her jaw clenched tight. As she turns to leave the lounge, escorted by the flight attendant, her mind races with anger and humiliation. She can't believe this is happening, can't believe that the ordinary woman she dismissed so easily holds so much power. Meanwhile, the billionaire watches her go, a faint smile playing on her lips. This isn't about revenge, she thinks to herself. It's about teaching a lesson, one that might stick if handled correctly. Back in the main cabin, whispers spread among the passengers. Some have pieced together what's happening while others remain clueless. But one thing is certain. Whatever unfolds next, this flight is far from ordinary. The flight continues, but the atmosphere in the cabin feels different now. Passengers glance at each other nervously, unsure of what's coming next. The angry woman sits stiffly in her seat near the front, staring out the window with a scowl etched on her face. She's fuming silently, replaying the confrontation in the lounge over and over in her mind. How could she have been so wrong? How could she not see that the woman she insulted was someone so powerful? Her pride is bruised, her ego shattered, but there's no one she can blame except herself. Meanwhile, the billionaire moves through the cabin like a calm storm. She doesn't raise her voice or draw unnecessary attention to herself. Instead, she quietly speaks to the flight attendants, giving instructions for what's about to happen next. There's a sense of control in her actions, a quiet authority that commands respect without demanding it. She knows exactly how this situation needs to play out, and she's leaving nothing to chance. As the plane approaches its destination, the flight attendant steps into the aisle and addresses the passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen," he begins, his tone polite but firm, "we have an announcement before we land. One of our passengers has something they'd like to say to everyone on board." He gestures toward the front of the plane, where the angry woman reluctantly rises from her seat. Her hands tremble as she stands, clutching a folded piece of paper. She looks around the cabin, her eyes darting from face to face, searching for some sign of sympathy, or at least neutrality. But all she finds are blank stares and folded arms. No one claps, no one cheers her on. The silence is heavy, pressing down on her like a weight. Finally, she clears her throat and begins to read. Her voice shakes as she forces out the words written for her by the billionaire's team. "I want to apologize for my behavior earlier today," she says, her tone flat and unconvincing. "What I said, and did, was wrong. I let my emotions get the better of me and I regret it deeply." She pauses, swallowing hard. Some passengers exchange skeptical glances. It's clear that this apology isn't coming from the heart. It's rehearsed, mechanical, and devoid of genuine remorse. But the billionaire watches silently from the back of the cabin, her expression unreadable. She knows that perfection isn't the goal here. It's accountability. And even if the apology feels forced, it's still a step in the right direction. The angry woman continues, stumbling over a few words as she reads. "I understand now that my actions were hurtful and unacceptable. I promise to do better in the future, starting with attending sensitivity training sessions to learn how to treat others with more respect." She finishes quickly, folding the paper and shoving it into her pocket. Without waiting for a response, she sinks back into her seat, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. For a moment, the cabin remains silent. Then slowly, a few passengers begin to clap. It's not enthusiastic applause, it's more of a polite acknowledgement that the apology, however insincere, was delivered. Others join in hesitantly, their clapping soft and measured. The billionaire waits until the noise dies down before standing up herself. Walking to the front of the cabin, she addresses the group directly. Her voice is calm but carries a quiet strength that commands attention. "Thank you all for your patience today," she says, looking around the room. "None of us expected things to unfold this way when we boarded this flight. But sometimes, difficult moments give us opportunities to grow, not just as individuals but as a community." She pauses, letting her words sink in. Racism and prejudice don't belong anywhere, especially not in spaces meant to bring people together. Today wasn't easy, but I hope it serves as a reminder that we're stronger when we choose kindness over judgment, understanding over assumptions. Her speech earns nods of approval from several passengers, and a few even smile faintly. This billionaire wraps up by thanking the crew for their professionalism and assuring everyone that the rest of the journey will be smooth and uninterrupted. As she returns to her seat, there's a noticeable shift in the mood of the cabin. The tension that had been lingering since the slap begins to ease, replaced by a sense of closure, even if it's imperfect. Behind her, the angry woman sits stewing in her humiliation. She hates being put on display like this, hates having her flaws exposed for everyone to see. But more than anything, she hates the billionaire for orchestrating it all. In her mind, she starts plotting ways to get back at her, vowing silently to make her pay for this public embarrassment. Unbeknownst to her, though, the billionaire has already taken steps to ensure that this incident doesn't end here. While the angry woman broods in her seat, the billionaire sends another quick message to her assistant on the ground. By the time the plane lands, arrangements will already be in motion to hold the angry woman accountable, not just for today's actions, but for a pattern of behavior that stretches far beyond this flight. As the plane descends toward Monaco, the billionaire gazes out the window, watching the glittering coastline come into view. She knows this isn't the end of the story. It's only the beginning. For the angry woman, the hardest part is yet to come. But for the billionaire, this moment represents something bigger, a chance to turn a personal slight into a lesson for the world, a lesson about power, privilege, and the importance of treating others with dignity no matter who they are. As the plane touches down in Monaco, the passengers disembark one by one, stepping into the warm Mediterranean breeze. The billionaire walks off last, her presence commanding yet understated. She exchanges a few polite words with the crew before heading toward the waiting car that will take her to her next meeting. Her focus is already shifting to the work ahead, but she knows this incident isn't over. Not for the angry woman, and not for the broader impact it could have. Meanwhile, the angry woman lingers near the terminal, her face flushed with shame and anger. She's still fuming about the apology she was forced to give, replaying every awkward moment in her mind. To her, it wasn't just an apology. It was a public humiliation, a deliberate act of punishment orchestrated by the billionaire. Every glance from other passengers feels like judgment. Every whisper among the group seems to be about her. She clutches her bag tightly, trying to hold on to whatever scraps of dignity she has left. But things are about to get worse. Back home, news of the incident starts spreading faster than either woman anticipated. Someone on the flight, perhaps a passenger bored enough to snap photos or record videos, leaks details online. Within hours, social media platforms explode with posts about the confrontation. Headlines pop up everywhere. Billionaire calls. Out races passenger mid-flight. Private jet drama. Woman slapped forced to apologize. The story takes on a life of its own, capturing the attention of millions. Videos of the angry woman stumbling through her apology go viral. Clips show her stammering, her discomfort evident as she reads the prepared statement. Comment sections fill up with reactions ranging from outrage to mockery. Some people defend her, saying everyone deserves a second chance, while others tear her apart, labeling her as a symbol of unchecked privilege and prejudice. Memes start circulating, turning her into an internet punchline. For the angry woman, the fallout is devastating. Her carefully curated reputation begins to crumble. Friends, who once admired her, suddenly distance themselves, uncomfortable being associated with someone now branded as racist. Sponsors pull out of charity events she had planned, citing concerns about public backlash. Even her husband, who had always stood by her side despite their rocky marriage, files for divorce. The stress becomes overwhelming, and she retreats, further into isolation. In contrast, the billionaire emerges as a global icon. People praise her for handling the situation with grace and authority. Journalists reach out for interviews, eager to hear her perspective on what happened. Social media users laud her decision to hold the angry woman accountable without resorting to cruelty. She becomes a symbol of empowerment, a reminder that power can be used not just for personal gain, but also to stand up against injustice. The billionaire uses this newfound platform wisely. In interviews, she speaks candidly about the importance of addressing racism and prejudice head-on. "It's easy to ignore these moments when they happen," she says during one televised appearance. "But ignoring them doesn't make them go away. It only allows them to grow. We need to confront these behaviors, not out of spite, but because it's the right thing to do." Her words resonate deeply with audiences around the world. Inspired by her example, many begin sharing their own stories of facing discrimination and standing up against hate. The billionaire takes it a step further, announcing initiatives aimed at promoting diversity and inclusion. She pledges millions to fund scholarships for underrepresented students pursuing careers in aviation and technology, fields where minorities are often underrepresented. She also partners with organizations focused on combating racism, using her resources to amplify their efforts. Back in her secluded apartment, the angry woman watches all of this unfold with growing resentment. She sees the billionaire's interviews, hears the applause she receives, and feels the sting of her own downfall even more acutely. Each mention of the billionaire's name feels like salt in an open wound. She scrolls through comments calling her names, mocking her downfall, and questioning how someone so privileged could behave so badly. The weight of public opinion crushes her, leaving her bitter and defensive. Desperate to salvage her image, she hires a PR team to help spin the narrative in her favor. They craft statements claiming she's been misunderstood, portraying her as a victim of cancel culture rather than someone rightfully held accountable. But their efforts backfire spectacularly. Old tweets and photos surface, showing her history of bigoted remarks and behavior. Each revelation digs her deeper into controversy, making it clear that the incident on the plane wasn't an isolated event. It was part of a pattern. By the time the dust settles, the angry woman has lost nearly everything. Her wealth, her status, and her relationships are all gone. She spends her days working odd jobs to make ends meet, haunted by memories of the life she once led. She avoids social gatherings, fearing judgment from those who might recognize her. At night, she lies awake, replaying the events of that fateful flight over and over again, wondering how everything went so wrong. The billionaire, on the other hand, continues to thrive. She travels the world, speaking at conferences and inspiring others to fight for equality and justice. Her company expands, earning accolades for its commitment to inclusivity and innovation. Yet despite her success, she remains grounded, never losing sight of why she took a stand in the first place. For her, it wasn't about revenge or flexing her power. It was about creating change, however small, in a world that often feels divided. And so, the two women find themselves on opposite trajectories. One rises higher, using her influence to uplift others and challenge systemic inequalities. The other falls further, consumed by bitterness and regret. Their paths may never cross again, but the ripple effects of that single confrontation continue to shape both their lives and the lives of countless others touched by the story. Months have passed since the infamous flight, but the scars it left behind run deep for both women. The billionaire has moved on, channeling her energy into building a better future. She's become a beacon of hope for many, using her influence to challenge outdated norms and inspire change. Her initiatives continue to grow, from funding scholarships for underrepresented students to partnering with grassroots organizations fighting racism. Yet despite her success, she hasn't forgotten about the angry woman whose actions sparked this chain of events. For the angry woman, life is unrecognizable. What was once a world filled with luxury and privilege has crumbled into obscurity. She works long hours at odd jobs just to get by, living in a small, dimly lit apartment that feels more like a prison than a home. Every day is a reminder of what she lost. Her wealth, her status, her sense of self-worth. The internet hasn't forgotten her either. People still post memes and jokes about her downfall, keeping her humiliation alive long after the initial scandal faded from headlines. One evening, while scrolling through social media, a habit she can't seem to break, she comes across an interview featuring the billionaire. The video shows her speaking at a packed auditorium, addressing a crowd of thousands. Her words are powerful yet gentle as she talks about forgiveness and personal growth. We all make mistakes, the billionaire says, her voice steady and calm. But true growth comes when we acknowledge those mistakes and work to do better. The angry woman watches the clip, her chest tightening with a mix of emotions: anger, jealousy, regret. She pauses the video, staring at the screen for a moment before slamming her laptop shut. How dare she talk about forgiveness? After everything she put me through. The thought festers in her mind, growing darker with each passing second. Unable to contain her frustration, she fires off a scathing email to the billionaire late that night. The message is bitter and accusatory, filled with venomous words meant to wound. "You ruined my life," she writes. "You humiliated me in front of everyone and destroyed everything I worked for. Do you know what it's like to lose everything because of someone else's ego?" She hits send without thinking twice, expecting no response. To her surprise, though, the billionaire replies within hours. The reply isn't what she expects. It's not defensive or angry. Instead, it's thoughtful and measured, almost empathetic. "I understand your pain," the billionaire writes. "I truly do. Losing control of your life is one of the hardest things anyone can face, but let me ask you something. Did I ruin your life, or did your own actions lead you here? I didn't force you to say or do anything on that plane. Those were choices you made, and they had consequences." Her words cut deep, hitting a nerve the angry woman has tried so hard to ignore. "I never sought revenge against you," the billionaire continues. "What happened wasn't about me punishing you, it was about holding you accountable. Accountability is painful, yes, but it's also an opportunity. Change starts with acknowledgement. If you genuinely regret what happened, prove it through your actions moving forward." The angry woman reads the email several times, her hands trembling. She wants to dismiss it, to delete it, and pretend it never arrived. But something about the billionaire's tone sticks with her. It's not condescending or smug, it's honest. For the first time since the incident, she finds herself questioning her own version of events. Was she really the victim here, or had she brought this upon herself? Despite the nagging doubts creeping into her mind, she deletes the email without responding. Admitting fault feels impossible, especially now. Pride and bitterness still grip her tightly, refusing to let go. She spends the rest of the night pacing her tiny apartment, replaying the billionaire's words over and over again. By morning, exhaustion overtakes her and she collapses onto her couch, staring blankly at the ceiling. Meanwhile, the billionaire carries on with her mission, unfazed by the angry woman's hostility. She knows that redemption isn't something that can be forced. It must come from within, and while she hopes the other woman will someday find peace, she understands that it's not her responsibility to fix her. Her focus remains on helping others who are ready to learn, grow, and contribute positively to the world. As days turn into weeks, the angry woman begins to notice subtle changes in how people treat her. Some coworkers avoid eye contact, others whisper behind her back. Even strangers occasionally recognize her, their expressions shifting from curiosity to disdain. Each encounter chips away at her already fragile confidence, leaving her feeling more isolated than ever. In a desperate attempt to escape her reality, she starts volunteering at a local community center. At first, it's purely out of boredom, something to fill the empty hours. But over time, she begins to see glimpses of humanity she hadn't noticed before. The kindness of strangers, the resilience of those facing adversity, the joy in simple acts of service, all of it slowly seeps into her consciousness, planting seeds of reflection. Still, she refuses to admit fault openly. Deep down, she knows the billionaire was right. That accountability starts with acknowledgement. But admitting it aloud feels like surrender. So she keeps her thoughts buried, clinging to fragments of her old identity even as they slip further out of reach. Back in the spotlight, the billionaire continues to shine. Her advocacy work earns global recognition, and she becomes a symbol of strength and integrity. People admire not just her wealth and achievements, but her ability to rise above hatred and use her power for good. She speaks often about the importance of grace and forgiveness, reminding audiences that everyone deserves a chance to grow, even those who've caused harm. The contrast between the two women couldn't be starker. One has embraced accountability, using it as fuel for positive change. The other remains trapped in denial, weighed down by resentment and regret. Though their paths diverged long ago, their stories remain intertwined, a testament to the enduring impact of choices made in moments of conflict. And so, the narrative unfolds, painting a picture of redemption denied and transformation achieved. While the billionaire's journey inspires countless others to strive for justice and equality, the angry woman serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that unchecked prejudice and entitlement can lead to irreparable loss. Together, their lives tell a story far greater than themselves, one that echoes through communities and generations, urging us all to reflect on the kind of legacy we want to leave behind. Years have passed since the incident on the plane, and while time has a way of dulling the sharpest edges of memory, its impact continues to ripple through the lives of those involved. For the billionaire, life moves forward with purpose and clarity. Her name is now synonymous with progress and change, not just in the business world but in the broader fight for equality and justice. She's become a household figure, a symbol of what true leadership looks like when paired with compassion. Her initiatives have grown exponentially, touching countless lives across the globe. The scholarships she funded have helped dozens of students break barriers in fields traditionally dominated by privilege. Young innovators, many of whom might never have had a chance otherwise, are now thriving in STEM careers, thanks to her support. Meanwhile, her partnerships with anti-racism organizations have sparked grassroots movements that challenge systemic inequalities at their roots. Every speech she gives, every interview she does, reinforces her belief that power should be used to uplift, not oppress. But even as her star rises higher, the billionaire remains grounded. She often reflects on the events of that day, the slap, the confrontation, the apology forced out of bitterness rather than sincerity. To her, it wasn't about revenge or asserting dominance. It was about accountability. It was about showing the world that no one, regardless of wealth or status, is above facing consequences for harmful actions. That lesson, she believes, transcends the individuals involved. It speaks to something universal about fairness and responsibility. For the angry woman, however, the years have been far less kind. Life after the scandal has been a series of missed opportunities and broken dreams. What little money she had left dwindled quickly, forcing her to rely on odd jobs and handouts to survive. Friends who once flocked to her side during her days of wealth and influence have vanished entirely. Even family members keep their distance, unable to reconcile the person they knew with the public image painted by headlines and memes. Loneliness defines her existence now. Days blur together in monotony, punctuated only by fleeting moments of self-pity or anger. She spends hours scrolling through old photos, reminiscing about a life that feels impossibly distant. Sometimes she wonders if things could have turned out differently, if she'd handled that day on the plane with humility instead of arrogance. But these thoughts are fleeting, drowned out by the bitterness that still festers within her. One afternoon, while volunteering at the community center, where she spent so much of her recent years, she overhears a conversation between two young women. They're talking about the billionaire, about how inspiring she is, how fearless she was in standing up against racism. One of them mentions the viral video of the forced apology, laughing as she recounts the awkwardness of the angry woman, stumbling over her words. The sound of their laughter cuts deep, reopening wounds she thought had healed. She excuses herself quietly, stepping outside to catch her breath. Leaning against the wall of the building, she closes her eyes, trying to shut out the noise. Yet the voices linger in her mind, echoing louder than ever. For the first time in years, tears stream down her face, not out of anger but out of sheer exhaustion. She's tired of running from her past, tired of pretending she doesn't care. That night, alone in her apartment, she pulls out a notebook and begins writing. At first, the words come hesitantly, but soon they flow freely. She writes about the flight, about the slap, about the humiliation of being called out by someone she underestimated so completely. She writes about the months that followed, the loss of everything she held dear, the isolation, the slow unraveling of her identity. But most importantly, She writes about regret. "I was wrong," she admits in shaky handwriting. "I let my pride and prejudice blind me. I hurt someone who didn't deserve it, and in doing so, I hurt myself more than I ever imagined possible." The admission feels heavy, almost unbearable, but also strangely liberating. For years she's carried this weight alone, refusing to confront the truth. Now putting it into words feels like setting down a burden she's been dragging behind her for too long. She doesn't send the letter to anyone, not yet. Instead, she tucks it away in a drawer, unsure of what to do next. Writing it was cathartic, but sharing it feels like stepping into unknown territory. Still, for the first time in years, she allows herself to imagine a different future, one where maybe, just maybe, redemption isn't entirely out of reach. Meanwhile, the billionaire continues her work, unaware of the internal struggle unfolding in the life of the woman she once confronted. She's busy planning new projects, speaking at conferences, and mentoring young leaders eager to follow in her footsteps. Yet there's a part of her that occasionally wonders about the angry woman, whether she found peace, whether she learned anything from the experience. These thoughts aren't driven by malice or curiosity, but by genuine hope. If nothing else, she wants to believe that everyone has the capacity for growth, even those who seem resistant to it. The story ends not with closure, but with possibility. The billionaire stands on stage at a global summit, addressing thousands of people gathered to hear her speak. Her message is simple yet profound. Change starts with us. It starts with acknowledging our mistakes, holding ourselves accountable, and choosing to do better. None of us are perfect, but we all have the power to make a difference. Back in her small apartment, the angry woman watches the speech online, her heart heavy with conflicting emotions. She knows the road ahead won't be easy, if there's even a road left for her to walk. But as she sits in silence, staring at the screen, a tiny spark of hope flickers inside her. Maybe it's not too late to start again. Maybe, just maybe, she can find a way to rebuild. Not the life she lost, but a new one built on honesty and humility. And so, the two women remain forever connected, not by friendship or shared purpose, but by the choices they made and the lessons they've learned. Their stories serve as mirrors reflecting both the best and worst of humanity. One chose accountability and transformation, the other clung to denial until it nearly consumed her. Together, they remind us that while the past shapes us, it doesn't define us. What truly matters is what we choose to do next.